On to the All Blacks now. The selectors have moved a step closer to deciding on their final squad for the Rugby World Cup. The squad's been trimmed down from 39 players to 34. This is for the upcoming pair of Bledisloe Cup tests against Australia. 3 more players will be cut ahead of the tournament in Japan, with 31 heading eventually off in pursuit of a third straight World Cup crown. Sports reporter Clay Wilson joins me now in the studio to discuss the makeup of the team and who are the winners and who are the losers. Clay, I just wanted to start with Carl Tuinukuafe, a bit of a crowd favourite. He's clearly on the outer. Steve Hansen didn't hold back, really, basically saying he's not agile enough.
Yeah, he really has stressed mobility, and not just with Tuinukuafe. It sounds like with a number of props and perhaps some that are still in the squad, right. They're really looking for props that can play with mobility with and without the ball. So they've really stressed that, and he's sent a message to a few of the props, it appears, that he wants them to be able to do that. And it's a bit of a fall from such a rapid rise for Tuinukuafe. Everyone remembers the great story coming from a doorman through to the Chiefs and then relatively quickly into the All Blacks. And he played 13 of their 14 tests last year, so a bit of a shame for him to miss out. I'm sure a lot of people will be disappointed to hear that. But it is such a tight race to make this All Blacks World Cup squad.
I thought Shannon Frizzell looked pretty good against the Springboks. Are you surprised he was dropped as well?
Yeah, he's in a bit of a race with Vai Fafita, who of course has made it. So they've obviously given the nod to Fafita to give him another chance, and they're really still struggling to find who that number 6 is going to be for the World Cup, with Liam Squire, of course, ruling himself out at this stage. So perhaps a little bit unlucky. It is a tight race with Vai Fafita, but Fafita appears to have just got his nose in front in that race.
Now, that worrying injury to Brodie Retallick, I guess, is made up in some part because Scott Barrett's back in the team. They're talking him up as a potential blindside flanker. He'd probably be one of the bigger blindside flankers in the world, would you say?
Yeah, he's a big unit, that's for sure. Steve Hansen has spoken a lot about how he's been impressed by what Scott Barrett can do at number 6, and a lot of All Black fans out there have expressed the same thing. So it will be interesting, although he's been named at lock, and obviously, like you say, with Retallick missing, probably will primarily play there, but how much time he does get in these 2 tests at number 6, given they're still not quite sure who's going to play in that role and how well he has done when he has played in that role for the All Blacks in the past. So, yeah, certainly one to keep an eye on in terms of these 2 tests, how much time he gets in that role and if that can perhaps be a possibility moving forward to the World Cup.
Yeah, great to have his power in the pack there. Talking about experiments, what do you think about the Mo'unga-Barrett combination? Will it continue in the Bledisloe tests?
I'm not sure if they're going to continue with that. It perhaps wasn't so successful last week, but other factors come into play there, of course, in terms of how well the team played in general, and so many errors from the All Blacks. It was hard to get any sort of fluidity and continuity into the game, so perhaps affected the ability of Mo'unga and Barrett to, perhaps for us to really see what they can do. So I wouldn't rule out us seeing it again, and I think they probably will want to make sure that it is something that they can go to if they want, but I still think Beauden Barrett, you'll see he'll be the starting 10 come the World Cup, with Mo'unga as the backup if they need him to come into that role.
They've got to give these things time though, don't they? I mean, you can't just have an experiment and play 1 or 2 games. If you want them to last a championship, a tournament, they need time in those roles, as well as working together as a combination.
Yeah, and it is a bit of a juggling act, because the Bledisloe Cup, of course, is hugely important to the All Blacks, and Hansen has stressed that, not just this year, but in previous years. So they obviously want to win these tests, but like you say, they want to give those combinations or try those things out and give people time in the saddle if they're going to have those roles at the World Cup. So very interesting to see how these 2 tests play out in terms of selection. Very quickly, just before we go, your tip for the game, a winner and a margin?
The first test, I can't see the All Blacks losing to this Wallabies team, obviously losing a player like Israel Folau. We saw them beat the Pumas at the weekend, and a fairly good Pumas side who, of course, pushed the All Blacks and had the success of the Jaguares in Super Rugby. So still not to be scoffed at, but I think the All Blacks will be rightly favourites for both these games and to retain the Bledisloe Cup for, must be coming up 20 years now. So don't rub it in, Clay. Yeah. Thanks very much. Clay Wilson there, talking about the All Blacks selection ahead of the Bledisloe tests, 2 of them coming up in the Rugby Championship.